Cambodia is one of the three kingdoms of Indochina. It is bounded on the west and north by Thailand, and on the south by the Gulf of Siam and the China Sea. It is bisected by the Mekong, one of the great rivers of Asia. Geologically, it is a huge bowl of sedimentary deposits enclosed by the mountains of Vietnam to the east, its own coastal ranges to the southwest, and to the north an escarpment along the Thailand border. The northern half of Cambodia is a vast region of open forest and one of the world's last great game lands. This almost trackless wilderness, but a minute spot on the Earth's surface, is the home of the rare Cambodian forest ox, or Khmer. Knowledge of the habits and environment of this animal became the primary objective of the expedition. Almost all records of the Khmer's distribution lie within the light green area of the map, a deciduous monsoon forest. An often park-like region of stunted trees, maintained as a subclimax by the agency of fire. In 1937, Dr. Achille Urbain, director of the Vincennes Zoo near Paris, described in a French scientific publication the calf of an unknown wild ox, procured by a French veterinarian in Cambodia as a new race. Following this remarkable discovery, an expedition collected for Harvard's Museum of Comparative Zoology the first complete museum specimen of an adult Khmer in 1939. In 1940, the Harvard Museum published a comprehensive study on the structure of this animal by the Harvard mammologist Harold J. Coolidge, who discovered that the Khmer had many characteristics of a primitive fossil ox. These differences were so striking that Coolidge classified this unique animal in a new genus, which he called Novibos. World War II and other events prevented scientists from learning more of the Khmer and the environment in which it has survived as a living relic of an ancient stock, perhaps ancestral to both the wild and domestic cattle of today. This film, the first documentary color film to show banting, wild water buffalo, gar, and Khmer in their native habitat, was made during a 1951 field study of wild cattle in Cambodia, conducted by Charles Wharton of Cornell University under the auspices of the Coolidge Foundation. The expedition began at Phnom Penh, the quaint capital of Cambodia, which rules a kingdom rich in fish and rice, but having a total population less than one-half that of New York City. From the moment of the first talks with the Cambodian ambassador in Washington, officials of this friendly country extended the most cordial cooperation. Vietnamese and Cambodian script give the title and purpose of the expedition. In early times, Cambodia rested under Hindu influences. Ancient music, religion, and dance passed down through generations bear unmistakable signs of cultures farther to the west, of India and Siam. The Khmer civilization, at its height between the 9th and 12th centuries, ruled the entire Mekong Valley and the tributary Shan states. Mighty stone faces still stand above the devouring forest, attesting the magnificence of Angkor Thom, ancient capital city of the Khmers. A parade of stone animals on a famous wall at Angkor Thom is but a small part of a pageant of gigantic carvings depicting the art and religion of a great but vanished people. With 60 soldiers of the Royal Army, the expedition sought the Khmer and the other wild cattle in a series of surveys which often penetrated areas frequently raided and patrolled by bands of armed communists. Heavily armed base camps were then established as near as possible to the range of the wild oxen. To reach these areas required the cooperation of each village, which turned out man, woman, and child to build new bridges and open the road for the convoy to pass. The main camp, which supported from 60 to 90 men, required tons of rice and dried fish. Fish trapped in muddy pools and wild game supplemented this ration. Fried flowers, leaves of forest trees, and fermented fish oils boosted the vitamin content of the diet. From this large base camp, a jeep was often used to search the park-like wilderness. For longer trips, needing a heavier escort of soldiers, elephant and ox carts made a lively and useful team. Ox carts were the most reliable transportation. They were used to carry bedrolls and heavy bags of rice. Neither of these are improved by dunking in a flooded stream, as we see here, but such conditions are unusual. Dry stream beds and parched throats are the order of the day in northern Cambodia, for water during the dry season is limited to muddy water holes. 1,000 years ago, at least half of the present Khmer Range was the center of a vast and thriving Khmer Empire. In searching for wild cattle, field parties passed ancient temples, now crumbling and uninhabited, save by the cobra and the leopard. Omar Khayyam may have been thinking of a similar half-buried ruins in Asia Minor when he wrote, "They say the lion and the lizard keep the courts where Yamshid gloried and drank deep." This spectacled cobra tried to take refuge in one of the large termite mounds so common in the home of the wild oxen. Threatened by the close approach of a guide, it rises in anger and follows every movement with rapt attention. Giant trees clutch and smother the centuries-old sandstone. These tall hardwoods provide an aerial highway swiftly traveled by a master of wingless flight, the gibbon. Male gibbons generally have a black coat, while female gibbons of this area are golden yellow. Here, the photographer is racing between the animal and its refuge in the denser forest. Gibbons inhabit larger patches of dense forest, scattered here and there in the common open or savanna forest. These clumps of heavy monsoon forest are slowly being destroyed by annual fires set by the natives. Without such fires, however, the open aspect of the Khmer habitat might in time disappear. As field parties entered typical Khmer habitat, the search for the elusive beasts was intensified. Cambodian hunters served as guides and trackers and led their groups, generally on foot, through mile after mile of trackless grassland and forest. Once wild cattle are spotted in the distance, a careful approach is planned. Constantly shifting winds of the dry season must be continuously tested with cigarette smoke. Wharton, a non-smoker himself, happily supplied his guide with pack after pack of strong native cigarettes. As each guide weakened from this treatment, another took his place. The difficulties of approaching and photographing wild cattle who often feed in early morning and late afternoon may well be imagined. Few places on earth can claim a greater aggregation of large hoof mammals than Cambodia. It is a remarkable fact that 4 large wild bovines inhabit the northern and eastern parts of this small kingdom. Here, banting and Khmer feed peaceably together. While Khmer only rarely associate with gar or buffalo, they frequently feed with the red banting. These 2 animals occupy much the same ecological niche and have similar habits, but apparently they never interbreed. Banting are the most common wild cattle in Cambodia. An old black male can be seen running with this herd. Banting, the wild red oxen, range eastward through Burma, Thailand, Indochina, and Malaya as far as Borneo and Java. Banting have been called the most cow-like of the wild oxen. They sometimes feed with domestic stock, and instances of interbreeding are known. Banting are domesticated on some of the small islands east of Java. This herd is paying a visit to a salt or mineral lick near Kosker, Cambodia. A white ring around the muzzle is present in most banting bulls from this part of Asia. The skin of the bull is black, and in older animals is almost naked, which causes the animal to appear darker. Another peculiar characteristic of the bulls is an area of unusually thick and naked skin on the forehead between the horns. In approaching wild cattle, it is the female that must be closely watched, for she is often the leader and the watchdog of the herd. This one has a calf nearby, and should anyone make the slightest movement, she would whirl and be off at a rapid gallop. With its rich red coat, the banting is truly a beautiful animal. Although he's been wading in the mud, this young bull shows the white stockings on each leg. These markings are found on gar and Khmer as well, but are seldom if ever seen on other wild or domestic cattle. A prominent white rump patch is a distinguishing mark of the banting and is not present in the other bovines of the region. Eld's deer are extremely common in the open forest areas of Cambodia. Males wear a shaggy neck ruff and may be identified by the shape of their antlers. The front and rear branches of the rack are aligned in a continuous smooth curve. This female sambar was photographed at noon as she finished a meal of the delicious purple berries of the pring tree. The sambar, the largest deer in Southeast Asia, and never wanders far from the heavy forest cover. An Eld's deer stag, seen here in late evening, is a magnificent animal. Eld's deer are often found feeding among herds of wild oxen. Unlike the forest-loving sambar, they prefer open grassy glades. Two other deer occur in Cambodia, the small barking deer and the rarer hog or marsh deer. Mynah birds don't hesitate to hitch a ride on a wild hog. Wild hogs have the habit of constructing out of grass large brood mounds, often measuring 10 feet in diameter. Wild water buffalo are found in parts of northern and eastern Cambodia. When clean, the skin is black, and these animals bear a majestic spread of horns considerably larger and longer than those of the average domestic variety. Water buffalo are extremely wary and alert. When resting, they quite often stand in a radial pattern like the spokes of a wheel, with noses to all points of the compass. This group, seeking the scant shade of the open forest, was photographed with a 75mm lens. Such a lens, used on most of the scenes in this film, presents the animal on the screen at exactly the same distance as seen in the wild. In most cases, a heavy rifle covers the camera, for buffalo have an evil reputation of charging if approached too closely. It is interesting to note the sinister, threatening position of the head of these animals as they swivel around to face the camera. Water buffalo need periodic soaking to keep their skin in good shape. Expedition members were forced to drink from water holes such as this, muddied and polluted by buffalo, banting, and elephant. During the dry season, many water holes completely disappear, and streams become rivers of sand. Searching for gore and Khmer, the expedition travels deeper into northern Cambodia, through endless miles of open forest. Scattered glades and parklands mark the best areas for wild cattle. In a roadside waterhole, a Jabiru stork finds good fishing. This colorful bird shares the wading with cranes and ibis. A giant black ibis, largest in the world, is known only from a small area in Cambodia north of the Great Lake. The haunting cries of the Asiatic crane are a frequent sound in the parklands and forest glades. It is not unusual to see these birds feeding together with wild cattle in the center of large open areas. Strange animals turned up along the way. This is a pangolin, or scaly anteater, being examined by 2 Cambodian guides. They are probably trying to find the head. The name pangolin comes from the animal's ability to roll itself into an almost impregnable ball. This creature is becoming rare in many areas because of the demand for the scales, which are used by Chinese druggists. While most of the wild cattle range is flat, an occasional hill may be found. Ground fires which sweep the area are set by natives to provide new grass for cattle and to make it easier for them to locate the cast antlers of deer. Such items sold to the Chinese apothecary trade help to supplement the very meager livelihood which the economically poor region provides. While there are no pronounced seasons of heat and cold in Cambodia, many of the trees lose their leaves during the dry season. Most of the prominent species belong to the family of dipterocarps, noted for bearing huge winged seeds. Leopards were flushed from this type of cover, and the tracks of elephant and tiger were common. Since oxen were kept close to the fire at night and wild game was abundant, field parties were never molested by the large cats. Gar are the largest of the wild cattle, often standing 6 feet high at the shoulders. They are almost always found in the vicinity of areas of dense forest, and it is rare indeed to find them out at midday or when the light is adequate for photography. Cows are lighter in color than the bulls, and calves are a reddish bay. This coloration is a characteristic of the calves of most wild cattle, including the bison. Gar are more often seen as solitary animals in Cambodia, although a group of 35 individuals was observed near Kosker, truly a remarkable and thrilling sight. You might think this bull gar was departing. So did his observers, who were startled to see him turn and appear to head directly for the camera. One of the marks of a bull gar is a distinctive Roman nose. This feature is best seen in profile, backlighted by a late afternoon sun. This beautiful example of an adult bull gar was approached to a distance of 55 yards. Actually, it appeared much closer due to its tremendous size. In this picture, it is eating the cane grass, a species of arundinaria much relished by wild oxen. Gar are known to browse the leaves of trees to a greater extent than either the banting or the coupre. Its eyesight is thought to be less keen than that of animals frequenting more open terrain. The gar is reported to secrete from its skin a heavy, oily substance. It has been suggested that this is an adaptive protection against insects in the heavy forest. Gar are considered a prize trophy. In mountainous terrain in Vietnam, they are frequently hunted from elephant back when they come out to feed in glades covered with head-high grass. The horns of the gar are heavy at the base and, unlike those of the banting and Khmer, taper abruptly to a sharp point. It is not always prudent to approach an animal this closely. This is doubly hazardous if it is a female with calf. Wild cattle make frequent visits to salt licks, where certain strata are exposed by erosion or brought up from below by termites. Elephants who dislodge the clay with their toenails and other game also visit these deposits. Tooth marks of wild oxen are often seen in the layer of soft clay. These deposits are not salty to human taste, but presumably contain minerals deficient in local vegetation. During the dry season, every drop of water is precious, for the sun bears down mercilessly and the water holes are muddy and far between. Every man carries his own shower fixtures. There is no shortage of hot water. A bath in a water hole is a unique experience, if you don't mind the smell of last night's elephant. Carved stone bulls, fallen and broken from centuries of neglect. These ruins are all that remain of a venerable culture which might have told us much of these strange wild oxen that trample their tombs and use their rice fields for pasture. How have Khmer, the last of their kind, survived in this remote corner of the globe? Here, feeding and unalarmed by the speculations of their observer, are Khmer, the mysterious wild oxen which inspired an expedition unique in zoological history. If the gar is regarded as the king of wild cattle, then surely the Khmer is the queen. While in size midway between the gar and banting, it has an elegance of form and grace of movement unmatched by other bovines with which it shares the sandy parklands of northern Cambodia. The discovery of the Khmer in Cambodia in 1937 was as unexpected as Sir Harry Johnston's discovery of the okapi in 1900 in the Ituri forest of the Belgian Congo. The finding of the Khmer was of special significance to paleontologists because of its relationship to certain fossil cattle of India, and to archaeologists and zoologists who are searching for living representatives of ancestral cattle. This film forms a part of an ecological study which indicate that perhaps 500 of these magnificent cattle remain alive in the forests of Cambodia, in areas lying both east and west of the Mekong River. Khmer are nervous and alert, often feeding in erratic patterns and wandering considerable distances. During the heat of the dry season, they do not hesitate to seek the cooler shade of the dense forests. Native hunters employ ancient flintlocks and shoot at close range. They hunt primarily for meat. Horns and hides are sold as byproducts. Fortunately for the Khmer, no special value is attached to its hides or horns. This Khmer bull was found dead, shot by a hunter from a distant village having no knowledge of the expedition's objective to study only living animals. The skeleton of this valuable find was purchased for the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology. The horns of this young bull do not yet show the shredding which forms such a distinctive color around the horn tip in older males. Like the males of bison and some domestic cattle, bull Khmer have a habit of plowing up the soil with their horns, especially around water holes and salt mineral licks. For fully 2/3 of older bulls have flanks, horns, and head covered with a gray mud. Under this constant abuse, the horn tips fray out into the shredded collars so common in Khmer bulls over 6 or 7 years of age. Of great potential value to cattlemen throughout the tropics might be the use of Khmer brought to this country as breeding stock, for few areas of the world will find such a population of wild cattle subject to the severe selective influences of flooding rains, searing droughts, great epidemics of disease, swarming pests and parasites, and competition from 3 other species. The horns of the Khmer branch off from the skull at a narrower angle than in the Banting and Gar and follow a curve more like that of the wild yak. Distinctive ridges on the horn core and a primitive tooth structure aided Coolidge in placing the Khmer in an entirely new genus. Other interesting and unique features of the Khmer are the notched nostril and a longer tail than is found in the Gar and Banting. Instead of completely white stockings, a streak of dark hair runs down the front of each leg from the knee to the hoof. The hooves most closely resemble those of domestic cattle, with the exception that the rear hoof is more slender in proportion. The Khmer bull is gray when young. As it ages, it turns darker until 12-year males are entirely black. On close examination, however, the hair is seen to be a dark reddish brown. As the bull darkens with increasing age, the dewlap becomes long and pendulous until eventually it may drag in the grass in front of the forelegs. No specimen of the female Khmer exists in scientific collections. It is mouse gray to brownish gray, depending on the angle of illumination. Cows have an antelope grace, and this effect is heightened by horns which grow upwards in spiral curves in older animals. The calf Khmer is reddish bay color, turning completely gray about the 5th month after birth. The young animal literally grows up with the new grass following the annual fire. April is the primary month for mating activity, and the young Khmer are born in December and January. Bull Khmer join together in bachelor clubs about May 1st, breaking away from the cows and the calves. Actually, they don't seem to be missed, for it is an old cow that leads the herd, while younger cows with calves form the alert sentinels. It seems that a time is reached in the yearly life of each bull Khmer when his services to the welfare of the herd are no longer required. Preserving the remaining Khmer in the face of disease and destruction of its preferred range is a matter of growing importance. Especially will it be so when hostilities cease. Through the establishment of sanctuaries, regulations on sports shooting, and penalties for the possession of hides and horns, vital protection can be given the Khmer, whose fame as a prize trophy may all too soon increase. The preservation of the Khmer, as well as other threatened and vanishing species of mammals which now survive in only small numbers, is a matter of international concern. This was indicated by the adoption in 1952 of a special resolution regarding the Khmer at the Caracas General Assembly of the International Union for the Protection of Nature. Khmer are most commonly found in a habitat offering a combination of environmental advantages. These features, considered essential for their survival, are natural open areas, salt licks, an adequate number of water holes to enable them to outlast the dry season, and suitable alternate areas close by where they may find refuge from predators. It is hoped that the government of Cambodia will establish sanctuaries in such regions and so preserves segments of this fascinating and weirdly beautiful land, which shelters one of the last great game populations of the world.